I used to think absence would come with a sound, maybe a slammed door, maybe someone raising their voice. But it came quietly and all at once. The phone buzzed once, no preview, just her name at the top. I already knew it wouldn't be a greeting. I opened the message with one finger, the way I might open a sealed envelope I hadn't asked for. Daniel thinks it's best if you don't join this trip. It might upset the balance. We're all fine. Don't come. No punctuation. No question. 7 sentences ago, I thought I was still part of this family. I checked the flight itinerary again. Still intact. My name was on every ticket. I'd paid for the hotel in advance, 3 suites at the Charleston House, 2 connecting rooms for the kids, first class, outbound, flexible, return. I had even noted dietary preferences. Her name wasn't even on the booking, just Daniel's and mine. But she always texted as if she was speaking on behalf of a collective. The cursor blinked as I typed a reply. Understood. Good luck. I stared at those 2 lines for a moment. Then I erased them. The screen went blank again. I set the phone down, face down on the kitchen counter. My thumb left a faint smudge on the screen. I didn't wipe it. The boarding pass arrived that evening like clockwork. The automatic confirmation from the airline. I didn't cancel it. There had been no formal uninvite. No airline policy against showing up. No one had revoked my seat. So I kept it. That morning I packed light. 1 carry-on, 1 coat. I left the framed photo of all 5 of us on the hallway table. It had been taken 2 summers ago on the front porch, Daniel holding Caleb Stephanie, looking immaculate in blue, Mom adjusting Lily's hair with that practiced half smile. I was cropped out. I had taken the picture. The airport was indifferent. That was a comfort. People in lines, people in suits, a child with glitter on her face. No one cared what I carried, or what I didn't. At the security checkpoint, I placed the tray down with practiced ease. Boots, belt, jacket. The officer looked at the tag on my bag and gave a small nod. I returned it brief and unremarkable. I was no longer in uniform, but it never quite leaves your shoulders. Gate 23A was already boarding by the time I arrived. I didn't rush. I scanned the row of passengers ahead of me and saw nothing familiar. I never expected to. When I stepped into the plane, I adjusted the strap on my bag and walked the length of the aisle. Row 12, window seat. Just where I'd chosen. Stephanie was 2 rows ahead. I recognized her hair, first perfectly straight-clipped just behind the ears. She didn't turn. She was talking to the flight attendant about sparkling water. Daniel sat beside her, reading something on his tablet. I caught a glimpse of the screen, some article about stock futures. Or maybe it was about nothing. The kids were across the aisle with Linda. I saw the corner of a sticker book on Caleb's tray. Lily's legs swung under her seat. My mother wore her usual sunglasses indoors as if the cabin lights were too much. Her nails were already tapping against her phone. None of them looked up. I placed my bag in the overhead compartment, slid into the window seat and buckled in. The leather was smooth, the armrest cool. I adjusted the clasp on my watch out of habit. The tiny scratch across the face caught the light, an old ding from a cargo door. Door in Kandahar. No one else would notice. I did. The seat beside me stayed empty for now. I watched the boarding continue. A man in a fleece jacket sat in 12C, gave me a polite nod, and put on his headphones. I turned my head back toward the window. 5 minutes passed. Then a quiet voice. "Miss Carson." I looked up. A young woman in uniform stood beside my row tablet in hand posture, carefully pleasant. "We have a family seated just ahead, who's requested to sit together. Would you be willing to exchange your seat? She didn't say which family. She didn't have to. Her eyes flicked once toward row 10. I followed her gaze. Daniel leaned slightly in murmuring to Stephanie. Linda's head remained forward, sunglasses still on. I waited for one of them to meet my eyes. None did. They mentioned you were traveling together, but thought this arrangement would be simpler. Simpler. I unclasped my belt slowly. My knee twinged just slightly as I rose. The man beside me gave me space. I didn't speak. I didn't nod. The flight attendant led me down the aisle toward the back of the plane. I heard one of the children ask for juice. I didn't hear a thank you. Row 30B, middle seat, no window. I slid in between a college student with chipped nail polish and a man who smelled faintly of pine air freshener. My knees touched the tray in front of me. I folded my hands in my lap. The fabric of my sleeve was worn at the edge, fraying slightly where the cuff had rubbed against cockpit levers for years. I traced the hem with one finger. No one said anything. I looked straight ahead. Nothing moved. And in that small, dimly lit moment, I understood something so quiet it almost escaped me. It wasn't about the seat. It was about being removable, and I had just proved how easy that was. I learned early that silence kept the room from shifting. Every Sunday morning before church, I used to stir the sugar twice in my father's coffee. 1 cube, not 2. No cream. Mug placed to the left of the newspaper so he wouldn't have to move his hand too far. The handle always pointed west. He never mentioned it. Once he glanced toward the cup and muttered, "Wrong mug." Then turned the page. The right one had a chip in the rim. He said it kept his lips alert. At 17, I memorized the texture of tablecloths. The way Stephanie smoothed hers before setting the cutlery, how my mother used coasters, but only for guests, how certain things had a place and a code I could never quite learn. I tried anyway. One Thanksgiving, I brought home a roasted chicken stuffed with rosemary and lemon, wrapped carefully in parchment. I had cooked it at a military base, an hour from home. The sleeves of my uniform still carried the scent. I placed it on the counter, hoping it might be noticed. My mother didn't lift the foil. We ordered from Greenfields. No one here eats dark meat anymore. She slid the dish into the fridge with the same precision she used for folding napkins. I didn't open it again. Not that day. Not the day after. Daniel's wedding came 2 years later. Stephanie mailed out dress requirements, navy floor-length understated. I bought one online clearance polyester blend, arrived wrinkled but passable. I ironed it in the hotel hallway that morning because the room's board was missing a leg. During the reception, they seated me at table 9, the far corner next to an uncle I didn't know, and a teenager who spent the entire dinner watching a football game on his phone. I counted 12 tables total. Daniel stood to give his toast. His voice cracked halfway through. "I wouldn't be the man I am today without the people in this room," he said. "My family's here, every last one of you." Stephanie smiled. My mother dabbed at her eyes with a folded napkin. No one looked in my direction. He stayed until the last slow dance, then left before cake. Back at the hotel, I peeled off the navy dress and hung it carefully on the closet door. A faint stain had spread along the hem, champagne maybe, or someone's misstep during the group photo. I never tried to clean it. When I joined the Air Force, I mailed postcards. 1 every month, nothing elaborate. A view of base housing, a dog standing near a hangar, a sunrise over an airstrip. Doing well, I'd write. Staying safe. Hope Lily's soccer match went well. None came back. During deployment, I shipped 2 small boxes home. One had a scarf I picked up at a market near Kabul. The other a hand-carved chess set Daniel once mentioned liking. I never asked if they arrived. Stephanie posted a family photo a few weeks later. They were all standing in front of a cabin, snow in the background, matching scarves. My father held a mug that looked like the one I'd used to stir coffee. I zoomed in. The chip was gone. I kept trying, though. Phone calls on birthdays, gift cards sent on holidays. I joined group texts and answered with thumbs-up emojis when Daniel shared Caleb's report cards. I never asked for updates. Just watched the conversation thread spool ahead without me. When Lily turned 6, I brought a wrapped book to her party, a collection of space illustrations annotated with simple facts. I'd written her name inside with a silver pen. At the end of the evening, I saw the gift table had been cleared. My wrapping sat unopened in a corner. My mother brushed past me near the kitchen. Maybe next time, just check the registry. They prefer practical things. She didn't pause. Her perfume left a faint citrus wake. Even practical things can carry weight, but not from me. They once told me I took things too literally, that I read into silence too much, but I never invented what wasn't there. I only filled in the blanks they left. At one point, I believed effort was currency, that if I paid enough of it through compliance, through quiet, through showing up, I'd be allowed to stay. I don't remember the moment that belief broke. I only remember the dull edge of something too familiar. The way I'd press my thumb against the curve of my ring, the one with the faded emblem, and wait for the room to notice me. But it never did. At Daniel's promotion dinner, I offered to take the group photo. Stephanie handed me her phone and stepped back into formation without hesitation. My mother placed a hand on Daniel's shoulder. "Now this," she said. "This is who we raised." I focused the lens. I didn't press the shutter for a full 5 seconds. None of them blinked, and that I think is what stayed with me most, not the dismissal, but the ease. I folded the dress. I washed the mug. I left the gift table clean. I never raised my voice. I just adjusted. I never knew if being left out hurt more than being erased slowly, but I learned to tell the difference by texture. The photo still hangs near the fireplace. 5 people, matching sweaters, smiles softened by candlelight. My mother placed it in a carved wooden frame and called it the perfect Christmas memory. I took the picture. I handed her the printed copy in an envelope that winter. She opened it, paused, then smiled faintly. "Just the core family, dear. It's better that way." I nodded. I didn't ask for another version. At Daniel's old house there was a pale stain on the corner of the rug near the bookshelf. You could see it if the light came in sideways. The year he turned 29, someone spilled red wine there during Easter lunch. Stephanie had brought out deviled eggs and a centerpiece of white lilies. Caleb bumped the glass. I saw the arc of liquid before it landed. "You should have cleared that end earlier," my mother said, brushing crumbs from her blouse. "You always leave things half done." I looked at my plate. My fork had a bent tine. I ate slowly. Later that evening, Stephanie handed me a towel. No eye contact. Just blot. Don't rub. I kept dabbing the rug long after the color faded to a ghost pink. The smell of vinegar clung to my fingers for hours. I still remember the day they aired the ceremony. Not many people tuned in, just a local segment, tucked between traffic reports and a school board meeting. I stood at attention as the officer read out the names of the men we brought home. 3 saved, 1 lost. My collar was stiff. My hands still smelled faintly of disinfectant. I texted the station link to the family group chat. It went through. 1 check mark. then 2. A few hours later, my mother replied, "Don't let it go to your head. That kind of attention doesn't last." No one else said anything. Stephanie sent a video of Lily at a recital the next day. Daniel followed with a photo of Caleb's soccer trophy. I tapped like. Nothing on back. When the local paper printed a small blurb under community notes, I cut it out and kept it folded in my wallet for weeks. The corner softened. The ink bled slightly from a drop of water on a rainy Tuesday. I never showed it to anyone. The first time I noticed my name missing was in a printed program. My mother had planned a Carson family legacy fundraiser for her church. They listed donors' children military affiliations. Thomas and Linda Carson, parents of Daniel Carson, U.S., Naval Reserves. There was a floral border around the names. I found the program in the guest bathroom, stacked neatly under a bowl of soaps. I stared at it longer than I meant to. Stephanie stepped into the hall behind me. "Mom thought it might confuse people," she said. "Your branch is different. It's just easier this way." I nodded. My fingers left an indent on the edge of the sink. In one of the earlier Thanksgivings, maybe the last one I attended in full, I brought a box of chocolate truffles, dark orange zest wrapped in gold paper, a small ribbon across the top. I had picked them from a boutique shop downtown, thinking they looked festive. After dinner, as people moved toward coffee and pie, I opened the box and set it gently near the tea tray. No one reached for one. 10 minutes later, I saw the box had been moved to the side table near the hallway. A coaster had been placed on top of it. "Too bitter," I heard someone mention. Not really what the kids go for. No one asked if I'd tried one. That same year, my coat went missing from the hallway rack. It was nothing special, just a grey wool with a faded lining, the kind you wear because it fits, not because it flatters. I found it hanging in the garage next to a set of cleaning supplies. Must have gotten mixed in with the guest coats, my father said, barely glancing up. Hard to tell with those dull colours. I didn't answer. The cuff of that coat still bears a faint streak of paint. I never removed it. It reminds me of how easily things get misfiled. I never minded being forgotten. What stayed with me were the small omissions so precise they almost seemed deliberate. At one point, Daniel hosted a backyard barbecue. Stephanie sent an evite to friends and family. I arrived with a tray of grilled vegetables and a linen napkin tied around the handles. There were folding chairs labeled with initials DSCL. Mine wasn't among them. "We ran out," Daniel said, gesturing toward the bench near the fence. "That spot's fine, right?" I sat down carefully. One leg of the bench was slightly shorter than the others. Halfway through the afternoon, I reached for a soda from the cooler. My mother stepped beside me, brushing her fingers along the rim. "You've always made things more complicated than they need to be." Her voice wasn't sharp, just flat, matter of fact, like reading a label. I didn't speak. I placed the soda back into the ice. My hand came away wet. I wiped it on the back of my pants where the fabric had already started to pill. I've learned that forgetting doesn't always look like silence. Sometimes it speaks in tones so neutral they leave no bruise. Just the chill of absence where warmth might have been. I keep a photo in a drawer now. Not framed, not displayed. It's from a base. Farewell, my name stitched across a weathered uniform. 3 people standing shoulder to shoulder, eyes squinting against the wind. No one in the photo shares my blood. But I am there. Centered, named, seen. I never expected a row number to carry meaning, but sometimes placement says more than language ever does. My seat was in 12A. I had chosen it deliberately, window-forward cabin, enough legroom to keep the ache in my left knee manageable. I placed my bag overhead without needing help. The tag was still frayed at the edge, a leftover from a layover in Ankara. I never replaced it. They were in row 8. I saw them while boarding. My mother was adjusting her scarf with one hand and holding a cup with the other. Daniel leaned across the aisle saying something to Stephanie, while Caleb tugged at his sleeve. None of them glanced my way. The boarding door hadn't closed yet when the attendant stopped beside me. Young, polished tablet held like a shield. There's a family seated nearby, hoping to sit together. Would you consider switching to accommodate? She looked past me before I answered. Her eyes landed on row 8. That pause, that single flicker of glance, was the only confirmation I needed. I followed the direction of her gaze. My mother was scrolling through her phone. Stephanie was adjusting Lily's seatbelt. Daniel reached up to place a jacket in the overhead bin. No one turned around. I waited. Just long enough to give room for an instinct I knew wouldn't come. They mentioned you're traveling together, but thought this might simplify things. Simplify? I unbuckled my seatbelt, folded the blanket they hadn't yet unwrapped, and rose. My knee caught slightly. I didn't wince. The attendant led the way without further explanation. A man in 11B gave me space to pass. His elbow brushed mine. No apology. Just movement. Row 30B. Middle seat. No window. I sat between a teenager in headphones and a man with a tablet game, blinking bright. My coat remained folded across my lap. The fabric still held the faint scent of cedar from the closet where I'd stored it for winter. The lining near the cuff had unraveled just slightly. I pressed the threads with my thumb. Across the aisle, a young woman watched me for a moment, then leaned forward. "Are you okay?" I gave her a small nod. Nothing more. She hesitated, then turned away. I adjusted my seatbelt and rested both palms on my thighs. The tray in front of me bore scratches that spelled someone's initials. The seat pocket held a safety card wrinkled near the corner. I glanced forward not far enough to see row 8, just enough to count the rows between us. 12 seats. 12 unspoken things. Somewhere above me, a light dimmed. The sound of luggage shifting echoed faintly. The cabin settled the way it always does before flight, a stillness designed to feel ordinary. I had paid for every seat, booked the flights, selected meals, reserved transportation from the airport, sent the itinerary in a group email carefully labeled and color-coded. Not once did anyone ask why I chose Charleston. Not once did they thank me for the effort. When I made the reservation, Daniel forwarded a list of hotel preferences. Stephanie prefers rooms with separate sitting areas. The kids need blackout curtains. Try to avoid pet-friendly places. They smell. I replied with 3 options. He circled one. Make sure we're not near the elevators this time, my mother added. And no adjoining rooms. We're light sleepers. No one asked where I wanted to stay. I chose the most expensive package, not for comfort, but to eliminate excuses. When the tickets arrived, Stephanie emailed back. Could you upgrade our return to flexible dates just in case Caleb's allergies act up again? I adjusted the booking. I didn't mention the price difference. Now, seated next to a stranger who smelled faintly of peppermints and detergent, I felt the shift, not sudden, not sharp, just final. 12 rows ahead, a family reclined in seats I had selected. They didn't look back, didn't send a text, didn't wave. I once believed inclusion was earned, that showing up, contributing, remaining neutral would guarantee a place. But some tables are built without a chair for you. Some last names echo like disclaimers. Last Christmas, Stephanie told me over brunch, "You know, Mom thinks of you more like a cousin now." It's less complicated that way. That word, complicated, always carried me out of rooms I never got to fully enter. I kept my hands folded. The skin near my knuckles bore a faint discoloration from a burn years ago. Boiling water during a late-night watch, too, rushed to wait for the kettle to cool. I hadn't noticed until the shift ended. I looked down at that mark now. Faint. Healed. But there. A reminder that some things don't fade because they want to stay. They fade because we stop trying to explain them. I didn't lean back. I didn't close my eyes. 12 rows ahead, a version of me remained seated, quiet, obedient, forgettable. But here in 30B, I felt something rearrange itself. Not the kind of break that tears, the kind that clears. And I didn't want my seat back. Chapter 5. Some exits don't need words. Just clarity. I used to think leaving required ceremony, something final, something witnessed. It doesn't. It just requires precision. The bank form was 2 pages, one to remove my name from the joint account, one to confirm I wouldn't retain access. I printed them at a local library because my home printer had run out of ink. The clerk behind the glass partition handed them back without looking up. "You'll need the other party to sign." I didn't send them the forms. I sent a copy of the closure confirmation instead. 2 days later, Daniel texted, "Did something happen? You could have just told us." I didn't answer. I deleted the message before the read receipt could register. I had nothing left to reword. The photos came down quietly. I didn't touch the glass, just slid the frames off the shelf and placed them in the box with the worn paperback I'd never finished. And the scarf from a gift basket I hadn't asked for. A label on the back of one photo read, "Lake Trip 2015, all of us." I had taken the picture. My name was written nowhere. I taped the box shut, not out of finality, just so the contents wouldn't shift. The legal change took 3 weeks. I filled out the paperwork in one sitting, signed the line where middle name He used to hold Marie. My mother had chosen it to honor her grandmother. Graceful, obedient, appropriate. I left the field blank. The clerk reviewed the form, tapped once at the top corner, then stamped it. "You'll get confirmation by mail. Any updates for emergency contact?" "No," I said. A week later, my mother left a voicemail. "I saw something come through the county office. Did you really change your name?" There was a pause. The kind that waits for permission to become anger. "You know, Emily, just because you erase something on paper doesn't mean it didn't come from us." I played it once. I didn't save it. Frank Dalton called in early December. I hadn't heard from him since the summer. We never talked often, just enough to keep things recognizable. "You heading home for Christmas?" I kept my voice even. "I am home." He let the line go quiet, then cleared his throat and asked about the weather. I told him about the snowfall, 3 inches light powder, no ice. I didn't tell him I'd started sleeping without blinds, that the light no longer felt intrusive. The apartment wasn't much. 1 bedroom, a kitchen that hummed even when nothing was running. I liked that. The walls held no photos, not because I wanted blankness, but because I didn't need reminders. I bought a second-hand bookshelf and filled it slowly, manuals, short story collections, a field guide to northeastern birds. No one asked why I chose those titles. No one gave opinions on whether I'd ever actually use the bird book. The mattress was new. The first thing I bought for myself without checking a review or asking what size would fit in a guest room. Stephanie forwarded a group message 3 days before Christmas. An invitation to holiday cocoa and cheer. The image was a flyer with holly around the edges and a photo of Lily in front of a fireplace. At the bottom in red font, "Please RSVP. We're keeping it intimate this year, just immediate family." I didn't reply. I wasn't expected to. Later that night, I stood near the kitchen sink, holding a mug with a chip near the rim. It came from a local thrift shop. The handle had a scratch in the glaze. It fit in my hand better than the ones from home ever did. I read somewhere that silence is often mistaken for absence, but I've come to understand it as a presence so full it doesn't need to interrupt anything. Daniel emailed me after New Year's. The subject line read, "Quick favor." The body was 2 sentences. "Dad wants to move the family trust under one signatory. Since your name's on some of the old paperwork, we'll need you to step back. No hard feelings, it's just cleaner this way." I forwarded the trust release forms within the hour. No message, just the PDF. A few days later, a letter from my mother arrived. No return address, just the looping handwriting I hadn't seen since she labelled my lunchboxes in 2nd grade. Inside, one line centered. "You always did have a way of stepping out before the real work began." I folded the paper, once slid it back into the envelope, and placed it in the drawer with my passport and tax forms. Not to keep, just to delay throwing it away until it stopped feeling like anything. I've learned the difference between reaction and recognition. This wasn't anger. This wasn't retreat. It was the quiet act of no longer waiting to be called back inside. I used to equate stillness with waiting. Now, I know some things are just meant to hold nothing but air. The apartment wasn't new, but nothing creaked that shouldn't. The radiator hissed only in the corners. The floor had one dip near the closet. I placed a chair leg over it and left it there. There's comfort in not fixing everything. The bookshelf leaned slightly to the left, no matter how many times I pressed a coaster under its footing. I stopped adjusting it after the 3rd attempt. The titles stood without alphabetizing. I remembered a sergeant once told me, "Uniformity is for those who fear movement." He died in his sleep during deployment. I think of him every time I let the mess settle. I bought a coffee grinder for the first time, the kind with a manual crank, not out of nostalgia, just to slow things down. The handle clicks twice before it catches. That's how I count morning now. Not in alarms or obligations, just the sound of something turning. The radio isn't reliable. FM stations fade out after 9 a.m., replaced by static and half sentences. I let it play. Sometimes the voices don't finish their thoughts. I don't need them to. I found an old recipe in the back of a deployment journal, scribbled in someone else's handwriting. No title. Just instructions: knead until it stops resisting. Let rise until it forgets. I don't know if James ever made that bread. He said he would when we got back. We never did not, really. Flour sticks to the cracks in my hands now. I don't wear gloves. The dough is temperamental. It folds when I'm quiet. Someone at the market recognized the patch on my jacket last week. Faded Air Force emblem. Threadbare but intact. "You still flying?" she asked, pointing with a bag of apples. "No," I said. "Just breathing." She nodded. Said nothing else. That was enough. There's a light bulb in the hallway that flickers every 3rd night. I let it. The blinking reminds me of base runway lights, timed interruptions between silence and action. The chair by the window rocks unevenly. I sit in it anyway. There's a stack of blank notebooks on the side table. I don't write in them every day. Some pages just hold single lines. Some hold nothing. That's allowed here. On my third morning, I received an envelope from the Department of Defense. Standard format. Plain language, a certificate of recognition for service beyond contract. I didn't frame it. I folded it once and placed it in the drawer with my discharge papers. Stephanie forwarded another photo, group shot in front of the fireplace, matching scarves, Daniel holding Caleb, Lily holding a sign that said, "Home for the holidays." I wasn't in it. I didn't look closely. The photo didn't need inspection. A second message followed, "Didn't want you to think we forgot. Thought this one turned out well." I didn't reply. The dishwasher hums unevenly. I prefer to wash things by hand. The rhythm is simpler. Scrub, rinse, stack. The drying towel hangs off the handle, slightly damp, slightly misaligned. The notebook I use for my military memoirs isn't chronological. I jot down moments as they resurface. Names I remember, names I don't. A list of things I carried: ration kit, blunt scissors, a metal spoon with someone else's initials. No one's asked to read it. I write in pencil, just in case I change my mind about how something happened. At night, the air gets cold enough to see breath. I wrap myself in an old quilt. The stitching is loose in places. I don't mend it. The gaps let the weight move differently. I keep the Air Force ring in a small dish on the counter. I don't wear it every day, but when I do, I feel the indent it's carved into my skin, like it belongs even when it's not present. Daniel emailed last week. A single line. "Mom wants to know if you'll be stopping by in spring." There was no mention of why. No mention of what had come before. I read it twice, then dragged it to the folder marked MISC. No reply sent. No reason offered. A woman at the post office handed me the wrong package yesterday, addressed to someone on the 3rd floor. I walked it up myself. The name on the doorbell was handwritten, slanted, uneven. When I rang, no one answered. I left the box on the mat, stepped back, and waited a few seconds before walking away. Not out of expectation, just to give it room. Back inside, I sat at the table. The light from the window fell across the grain of the wood. Uneven, worn in places. I ran my hand along the surface and thought, some things don't need to be restored to be good. Not everything is waiting to be returned to. Some things are simply resting finally in the right place. I've learned that people rarely reach out because they remember you. More often, it's because you used to do something they've grown used to not doing. The voicemail came in the middle of a quiet afternoon, the kind of day where the air sits still, and even the birds seem uninterested in movement. Stephanie's voice was clipped polite with the kind of smile you can hear, but not feel. "We're putting together a slideshow for Dad's birthday photos from over the years, family milestones. It'd be nice if you could send one of yourself. Something recent, just so it feels complete." She didn't mention where the party would be. She didn't say when. I didn't reply. Later that evening, I opened the drawer where I kept my documents. Military ID. Passport. A photo I had taken myself the previous winter, jacket zipped to my chin, snow in the background, eyes squinting against the wind. I looked ordinary in it. Not useful. Just present. I folded the photo in half and placed it behind the file labeled Carson. Archive. Not for them. For the drawer. The next day, Daniel's email appeared in my inbox. The subject line read, "Quick favor, re-Dad." He explained that our father needed someone to temporarily stand in as secondary signatory for the household account. The bank needed a name that wasn't too old to drive downtown. You're still on a few old documents anyway. Figured this wouldn't be a big ask. The cursor blinked as I reread the message. I typed 2 sentences. I'm no longer available for family financials. Please update accordingly. I didn't add a sign-off, just hit send. No response came back, not even a receipt. 2 days later, a message from my mother arrived. Just 1 line. I don't understand what you're trying to prove. There was no greeting, no question about my well-being, no mention of my name. I stared at the sentence for a while, not because it stung, but because it felt like an echo of every conversation we'd never had. The week before, I'd fixed the loose leg on the kitchen stool. One of the screws had rusted through. I replaced it with a mismatched brass one from the hardware shop down the street. Now, it wobbled less. Still imperfect. Still mine. No one had asked where I lived. No one had asked if the heating worked, if the snowplow came on time, if I needed anything at all. They didn't want me back, just me outline. I remembered a framed print that hung in our family hallway. A landscape, trees in winter, no footprints. My mother once said it reminded her of quiet strength. She replaced it years later with a canvas of sunflowers. I saw a copy of the slideshow on a shared drive Stephanie had sent to extended family. I wasn't meant to have access, but someone had left the link open. There were photos from Daniel's graduation, Caleb's first camping trip a Christmas morning. I had cooked breakfast for them before heading to base. The caption read, "Grateful for everyone who shows up." I closed the browser. The laundry I'd left folded on the arm of the couch hadn't moved. The striped sweater on top still bore a faint coffee stain near the wrist. I'd meant to scrub it out, but the mark had softened into the weave. It reminded me of long drives and convenience store cups that never fit their lids properly. That same week, a birthday card arrived in the mail. Not for me. For Lily. My mother had used my return address. The envelope was sealed neatly. The handwriting on the front was unmistakable mine from an old family list they'd never updated. Inside, the message read, "From Aunt Emily, hoping to see you soon." It wasn't my signature. They hadn't bothered to change the return label or the handwriting style, just lifted a version of me from an older year and pasted it into the present. I tore the card in half and placed both pieces in the recycling bin. Not as a statement, just as a correction. There's a kind of quiet that settles in when you stop performing a role others had already rehearsed around your absence, a space that no longer expects you to fit into its borders. I made soup that night. Lentils, thyme, carrots cut too thick. I used the chipped spoon, the one I'd carried through 5 postings and never managed to replace. The metal handle was slightly bent. It still held heat. While it simmered, the light over the stove flickered once, then steadied. I left my phone face down. Not on silent. Let them call. I used to think change would feel like a rupture. Now I know it arrives as a quiet reshaping, like water, finding its new level when no one's watching. The flight club was smaller than I expected. 2 instructors shared a wooden clipboard for scheduling. The logbook was kept in pencil. Some of the keys had duct tape on them labeled with initials. I didn't mind. I liked the smell of the hangar, fuel oil, sun-warmed concrete. They called me ma'am at first, until I asked them not to. On Tuesdays, I taught ground control to a teenage girl with a sharp voice and untied boots. She never made eye contact. I didn't push it. By the 3rd week, she showed me a patch. She sewed herself an eagle over blue stitching, crooked but bold. "I didn't trace it," she said. "You shouldn't have to," I told her. The community garden was 6 blocks from the apartment. I signed up for a half plot. The tomato seeds came in a packet with faded corners and a handwritten note tucked inside. Let the soil rest between harvests. Even good things need pause. I started yoga on a dare from someone at the market. Friday mornings, small group, no mirrors. The instructor played old jazz instead of whale sounds. We held the poses longer than felt natural. That's where I learned stillness could ache in good ways. Every other week, I met with a circle of women who brought soup in mason jars and books with dog-eared pages. Some brought poems, others brought nothing. No one asked what I used to do. No one asked why I didn't talk about family. One of them, a retired librarian with cropped silver hair, pointed to the callus on my ring finger. Marriage, military. She nodded and passed me a biscuit. Carolyn Price showed up on my porch with a thermos and 3 sentences. You look taller. Vermont suits you. You don't owe them anything. We sat without talking for half an hour. Then she leaned back in the chair and said, You're really done with them, huh? I looked out toward the trees. The leaves had just started to turn brittle at the edges. I didn't leave, I said. I just stopped returning to places I was never welcomed. She didn't press. That's why I opened the door for her. I started writing letters not to complain, not to remember, but to say thank you for covering me on rotation when my lungs gave out at 9,000 feet, for handing me the last clean pair of socks when mine was soaked, for making the joke about peanut butter MREs when no one was breathing in the tent. Most of the addresses weren't current. I sent them anyway. Stephanie called again around the time the first frost came. I let it ring until it turned to voicemail. Her voice was clipped efficient. Mom wants to know if you're available for Easter. You're not on the family calendar. I deleted the message without saving the date. That night, I pulled out the family calendar I'd been given years ago, the kind with everyone's birthdays pre-filled. My name had been scribbled in for April. No holiday noted, just my name. I crossed it out with a blue pen. The ink bled through the paper. I left it that way. Daniel emailed next, short, neutral. Would you be willing to co-sign on Dad's refi paperwork? It's just easier since your name is already on record with the bank. I wrote back, I've stepped away from all joint obligations. Please proceed without me. No reply came. Later, my mother sent a typed note printed on the kind of ivory paper she used for formal thank you cards. You've changed, Emily, and not for the better. She signed it with her full name. I folded the note into a blank envelope and slid it between the pages of a novel I'd never finished. Not to preserve it, just to keep it from curling. I spent the rest of that week painting the baseboards in the hallway. The brush had uneven bristles. The paint was too thick. I didn't mind the way it dried, slightly streaked, slightly imperfect. It matched the scuff marks near the kitchen, the ones I stopped trying to erase. A neighbor knocked that Sunday to borrow a screwdriver. He noticed the patch on my backpack. You used to be in No. I still am. Just not for who you think. He didn't ask for more. I keep a metal tin on the bookshelf inside the Air Force coin from my final deployment, a safety pin from a torn uniform, a list of radio call signs in my own handwriting. None of it is for display, but I open the lid sometimes just to feel the weight of things that were earned, not given. I don't need recognition now. I just need clean floors, firm boundaries, and the space to answer only when I choose. I used to think severing ties would feel like breaking something loud. Beetle. Something that might leave shards, but it was quieter than that, like turning down a dial until there's nothing left but static. The document came in the mail 2 weeks earlier than expected, certified, folded precisely, no fanfare. Just my new name printed in clean, scented font. No middle name. No trace of the word my mother once told me she chose because it softened the sound. I folded the certificate once more, sealed it in a white envelope, and added a handwritten note. 9 words, each one printed plainly. Please, update your records. I will not be involved in any future family affairs. I didn't include a return address. I didn't add a greeting. I didn't sign my name. At the post office, the woman behind the counter asked if I wanted insurance. No, I said. Just certified. She stamped it without asking for more. The receipt slipped into my coat pocket. It stayed there for days, curling slightly with the heat of my hand. 1 week later, a message from Stephanie lit up my phone. Was that really necessary? That was all. No greeting. No punctuation. Not even her usual sign-off. I stared at the words for longer than they deserved, then deleted the thread. I opened my contacts. 5 numbers sat under the letter C. I didn't delete them. I just removed the names. Blank entries now. 10-digit echoes. I didn't block anyone. Blocking implies anticipation. I expected nothing. That afternoon I opened the drawer beside the boiler and took out a photograph I hadn't touched in months. It was warped from time, the corners turned inward like they were folding away from memory. A picture of us, 5 people, on church steps. I was 10. My hands were clasped too tightly in front of me. My father's voice floated back sharp and unbothered. Why can't you just stand still like the others? I placed the photo into the fireplace. I didn't watch it catch right away. Glossy paper hesitates. It curled slowly, the smiles breaking apart before the bodies did. There was no smoke, just the quiet sound of something giving up its shape. I turned my back before it was ash. 3 days later, Stephanie emailed again. Mom's asking if you're okay. She says you're turning this into something it doesn't have to be. Attached was a photo from Caleb's birthday. Cake, candles, streamers. I wasn't mentioned in the caption. I didn't click to enlarge it. Later that week, I requested the estate withdrawal form. It wasn't dramatic, just a checkbox next to voluntary removal, a line for initials and a space for date. I signed with a pen that had almost run out of ink. The letters came out faint, but legible. I handed it to the county clerk in person. She wore a cardigan with a missing button and didn't meet my eyes. You'll receive the update in 30 business days. She stamped it and slid the form into a stack without looking back. The stamp left a faint red print on my palm. I left it there until the evening. That night, I found a set of old keys in a rusted tin. One labelled garage, another storage, one with no label at all. The edges were dulled from time, the teeth smoothed down like something that had been turned too often. I placed them in an envelope and wrote across the front, "Return to sender." I didn't include a note. I didn't sign the flap. The mailbox clanked hollowly when I dropped it in. I waited a second before walking away. Not out of hesitation, just to feel the final click. A few days later, a manila envelope arrived in my mailbox with a packet of updated legal documents. My name no longer appeared on any shared accounts, authorizations, or emergency contacts. The final page held a table of prior designations. My row was blank. I didn't keep the envelope. I removed the barcode sticker and dropped the rest into the shred bin behind the grocery store. Later that night, I stood at the kitchen counter, staring at an old tea mug with a chipped rim. The chip had deepened over time enough to graze the inside of my lip if I didn't hold it carefully. I ran my finger across it once and set the mug back down. There's a drawer now in the hallway. It used to be where I kept letters, photos, receipts, artifacts of obligation. It's empty, not organized, Not minimalist, just quiet. Stephanie tried once more. Lily says she misses her aunt. She doesn't understand why you won't come anymore. No mention of my name, no admission, just guilt, outsourced. I didn't respond, not because there was nothing to say, but because I no longer place my voice where it's only measured for tone. I no longer measure my life in urgency. The rhythm has changed. I reached for the kettle with my left hand this morning. The handle felt warm before I turned the burner on. The click of the switch was enough to signal the beginning. The mug I used was one I almost threw away last spring, ivory ceramic, the kind found at flea markets or at the back of other people's cupboards. There's a hairline crack near the base of the handle. It hasn't grown, and I've stopped checking. It holds heat better than the newer ones. I placed it on the table beside a book I'd been reading slowly. A novel I found at a second-hand store spine, softened from being read too many times by strangers. A pressed leaf marked my place oak, brittle, deep brown, paper-thin. I couldn't remember where I'd picked it up. Maybe from the path behind the airfield. Maybe not. The window faced east. The glass had fogged slightly at the bottom corner. I hadn't bothered wiping it clear. The condensation left tiny streaks along the wood, but nothing damaging. I learned that not everything needs to be preserved. I poured the tea gently, letting the sound fill the space in place of music. The house didn't need noise to feel whole. I sat without straightening the stack of mail near the edge of the table. There were a few unopened envelopes, reminders for appointments I didn't plan to attend. One had handwriting I recognized. I left it sealed. The chair beneath me creaked when I shifted my weight. The legs had been uneven since I moved in. I liked the small lean it offered, a subtle reminder that balance didn't always look like stillness. The floor beneath the table bore a faint scratch from a time I dragged the bookcase too far without lifting it. I had meant to polish it out. Then I didn't. Now I barely notice. There's a small photo pinned to the side of the fridge, an old squadron lined up in desert sun, squinting into light. My name stitched just above the left pocket. No one in the picture knows my parents. No one in the picture forgot me. A voicemail came in yesterday. No voice, just ambient sound and then a disconnect. The number was familiar, but I let it pass. I don't answer out of politeness anymore. I answer only if it makes sense to. A neighbor once asked why I didn't decorate more. "You could make this place look like a home," she said. I nodded. "It already does. Just not your kind." She never brought it up again. "I don't keep a calendar on the wall. My routines don't require counting down." Once during a holiday, I received a card with my name misspelled one letter off, just enough to make it look accidental. Inside it said, "Hope you're well. We think of you." I didn't reply. Not out of bitterness, but because the past tense didn't match the ink. Think and thought can look similar when written with the wrong pen. This morning I placed my hands around the warm mug and let the steam touch my face. The ceramic's heat pressed into the joints of my fingers. I turned the ring around my fourth finger, a silver band etched with worn lettering. The emblem almost gone now. Air Force Standard issue. Still smooth, still mine. I don't wear it for others. I wear it for the days that blur. The mail slot clinked as a flyer dropped through. I didn't pick it up. I knew it would say something I didn't need. I remember once overhearing my mother at a family event, voice low but clear. She was always so hard to place, not like the rest of us. No one responded. They didn't have to. I don't think she meant harm. I just think she never saw how much I heard her, even when she wasn't speaking to me. Now I don't ask to be placed. I've stopped needing context. The bookshelf holds more notebooks than novels. Most of them are blank. A few pages filled with things I've written down, just to get them out of my head. One line on a recent page reads, "There's peace in being unnecessary." The kettle cooled as I sat. I didn't rush to drink. I held the mug steady and watched the light filter in through the glass. There was a flicker of shadow against the curtains, maybe a bird, maybe just wind. I didn't rise to check. The door was slightly ajar. The wind moved through it gently, not like something trying to enter, but like something letting me know it didn't need to. I stayed seated, not because I was waiting, not because I was hiding, but because stillness once unfamiliar now fits. There was no toast to raise, no audience to note the absence, but I knew with the quiet certainty that doesn't require proof I am here, and that is enough.